Hi, my name is Lita. I was born in the UK. I came to Malta years ago and started living in San Ġwann many years ago. I love it here, and I'm going to start telling you some history about San Ġwann itself. I hope you enjoy it. Malta had 11 foreign rulers in the past 2 millennia. Malta became a British colony in 1813, which was confirmed by the Treaty of Paris a year later. Malta was an important part of the British Empire, a strategic stronghold in the region, and a stepping stone for Britain's expansion to the east. Malta's fortunes were inextricably linked to those of Britain. This was never more evident than during the World War I and II, when the islands played a pivotal role during this time. During the First World War, Malta was a supply station and a base for the recovery of the injured. In fact, Malta earned the title Nurse of the Mediterranean. The bravery of the Maltese people during World War II was acknowledged by King George V, who awarded the whole population of Malta the George Cross for valour. After the war, the movement for self-determination grew stronger, and finally, Malta was granted independence on September the 21st, 1964. British forces retained a presence in Malta until March the 31st, 1979, when their military bases on the island were closed. The Union Jack first flew over Malta in San Ġwann. By the 18th century, the threat of invasion from the Ottoman Empire had receded, so the Maltese started to build on land outside the fortified cities. One farmhouse built there is Tashindi Farmhouse, on the road between San Ġwann and Mater Dei Hospital. Records don't show who built it, but by 1798 it was owned by a 21-year-old cotton merchant called Vincenzo Borge. This was the year when the French occupied the islands. Together with 2 other Maltese, he was one of the main figureheads in the uprising against the French. The British supplied him with arms, and he used his home as his field headquarters. Borge spoke to the British Admiral, Alexander Ball, to see if the United Kingdom was interested in taking the islands, explaining, together with 2 others, that the majority of the Maltese wished to see the islands under British jurisdiction. On February the 9th, 1799, Borge hoisted the British Union Jack over his farmhouse, showing his commitment to the cause, and the first time the British flag flew over Malta. San Ġwann has an ancient history, which is woven into the national history of Malta. The oldest remains of human development in the locality are the cart ruts, found close to the San Andrea zone. These deep grooves cut into the rocks, and they originate from Neolithic times, when tools did not as yet exist, but their use is still a mystery. They were probably carved out during the Bronze Age, from about 2300 to 1000 BC. Their function is not established, but they are presumed to be a transport facility. These cart ruts suggest that there was a prehistoric agricultural community living in San Ġwann, who farmed the fertile valleys of Wit Ormor, Wit Balut and Wit Olea. The Arab influence in the region can be seen in the Semitic names given to a number of areas, such as Tal Arar, Limsirah, and the valleys of Wit Ormor, Wit Balut and Wit Olea, and many other field localities. Other excavations in San Ġwann revealed remains from the Roman period. Tombs and a covered cistern were found showing suggestions of another active community. The most famous remain is that of the Roman tower, Tacheda, which is one of 8 defensive towers built across Malta around the 3rd century. Tacheda Tower, also known as San Ġwann Roman Tower, is a Punic Roman tower, and this site was used as a cemetery in medieval times. The tower is one of a chain of towers that were built at their time, designed to aid each other from invasions coming from the sea. The name Tacheda was given in the medieval ages by Christians as a devotion to St. Helen. As before the parish church was built, San Ġwann lands were all part of Birkirkara. This is located in Tri il Baruza, surrounded by modern housing estates. Torre Talansun is another historic gem in San Ġwann. For centuries, this building served as a watchtower to protect the area from invaders, as from its roof, one had a direct line of vision as far as Valletta to one side and to Mdina in another direction. No early dates of the building are available, only that it was built around the middle of the 15th century. What is known is that a certain Wencelan son from Vittoriosa, having lost his family during the pestilence of 1676, decided to live in the country, far away from his home. His farm was often targeted by the Moors, who landed in Spinola and attacked the farms in the valley, known as Wit Ormor. So Lanson fortified his farm and turned it into a little fortress in 1713, as the date appears under one of the balconies. The road to it, once just a rugged path, was called the Foreigner's Way, because up and along it came the raiding pirates and corsairs, who burnt, razed and pillaged, taking many locals as slaves. There is little doubt that the tower is medieval, and so proceeds most of the military edifices of Malta. This includes from the time of the Knights of Malta and the rebuilding after the first great siege of Malta. San Ġwann used to be called Imserah. There are a number of chapels in San Ġwann, apart from the parish church, which is dedicated to Our Mary of Lourdes, and was established as a separate parish in 1965. The San Ġwann Parish Church devotion began with the advent of the Franciscan Capuchin friars to this locality in 1956. They built a church dedicated to Our Lady of Lourdes, which was finalised in 1959. It became a parish 6 years later. The feast of the San Ġwann parish is celebrated in the first week of August. Now for the chapels. Talmencia Chapel dates back prior to the 15th century. The chapel is in an area of San Ġwann known as Mencia, meaning the forgotten. There is a cave behind this chapel known as Arharuba, which goes under this chapel. Mencia got its name as people claim a painting was stolen and buried in the cave. No one has ever found it yet. Thus, Mencia, referring to the painting, came to be known as Mencia. This area has a high cultural and historical value, characterised by a cluster of buildings forming a hamlet already visible in 1908, which is marked by the Mencia Sanctuary and the Lansun Tower, and is located just 200 metres from the Mencia cart ruts, another site of archaeological importance. Another chapel in San Ġwann is a tiny chapel known as San Ġwann Talarar, which was originally built by a private family in 1546. It was later abandoned and fell in disuse, and eventually in 1659, Bishop Balaguer declared it should no longer be considered as a chapel. It was reopened in 1672. Of particular interest is the small marble plaque near the door of the chapel with the abbreviated inscription Non gode l'immunità ecclesia, warning criminals that they do not have immunity from being apprehended by the authorities if they took refuge within the holy place. Such warnings were introduced in 1761. Another chapel in San Ġwann is the 16th century Santa Margherita Chapel, also known as Arar Chapel. The chapel was built for the farmers working the surrounding fields. The exact date when St. Margherita Chapel was built is unknown, but it was around the time of the Great Siege of Malta. It was mentioned for the first time in an inscription of Monsignor Pietro Dusina in 1575, when he was sent by the papacy to inspect the sparse chapels on the Maltese islands. he found the chapel to be the property of a local man named Salvo Calleja, who made sure that a mass took place in the chapel once a year on the feast of St. Margaret. Father Donat Spiteri, who was the parish priest at San Ġwann between 1983 and 1991, restored this chapel dedicated to St. Margaret and also established a parish there. That's it for the chapels in San Ġwann. Now we move on to the underground flour mill, constructed by the British military during the 1950s. As part of the civil defence measures, in order to keep the population provided with bread and as a contingency measure against Malta being affected by a potential nuclear attack within the Mediterranean region by the Soviet bloc. This mill is located in Misrach Centaura in San Ġwann, which is near the government school, and was dug out after the Second World War in order to store grain for the population, as the Maltese islands depended mostly on imported food, particularly grain, that provided the main staple diet. The oldest house in San Ġwann is on the main road opposite the Bank of Valletta. Anthony Grima, who founded the first football team, St. John's Youths, in 1950-51 in San Ġwann, or in Sirach, as it was called back then, together with his brothers Nenu Grima, Freddie Grima, who is Marika Baylis's father, Paulo Grima, and their father Joseph Grima, used to meet at the back room of this house with others, which is now a kind of tea shop. Anthony Grima was also the co-founder and president of the first band club in San Ġwann. And on June 24th, 2003, the local council honoured Anthony with the Meritus San Ġwann for his constant work in San Ġwann. There are a number of valleys in San Ġwann: Wit Olea, Wit Balut and Wit Ormor. Wit Olea became a bird sanctuary in January 1994. In 2001, this valley was also designated as a tree reserve or a nature reserve, and in 2003 as a special area of conservation. Remains found in or near Wit Olea include pottery vessels from the first phase of the Bronze Age, a tomb dated to 50 AD containing cremation urns, pottery flasks, jars, saucers, lamps, 2 female skeletons and 1 male skeleton. Wit Ormor is renowned for a number of megalithic-type stone blocks that may have belonged to a Neolithic structure, and now this has a newly embellished picnic area there for residents to relax after a hard day's work, or for dog lovers to stroll there with their beloved pets. There is also an industrial estate in San Ġwann. Here one can find the Life Science Park, a prestigious 11,000 square metre site set in a park-like environment, which is strategically positioned near the island's main hospital, a new oncology centre and the University of Malta. The Bio-Malta campus plays an important role in addressing the challenges of the 21st century, like research into individualised medicine, biotechnology and preparation of alternative fuels. Well-equipped laboratories, together with the support of universities and hospitals, play a future role in the development of health research and the pharmaceutical sector. The centre was built on a site occupied by the ex-Yorkie factory and the VF Jeans factory. In days gone by, San Ġwann used to form part of 2 localities, St. Julian's and Bucharest. In 1967, there were 2,122 people living in San Ġwann. By 2014, there were 12,523. And by 2018, there was an estimated figure of 14,720 living in San Ġwann. It's a pity we don't have the exact number of people now living in San Ġwann, but according to news reports, localities such as San Ġwann saw their residential population soar, and had major increases of 18.2% in the population. In fact, Eurostat figures show that Malta registered the highest increase in population among all European Union countries, which was due to migration. The Maltese government introduced the concept of local councils in the 90s. The Local Councils Act was modelled on the European Charter of Local Self-Government Council of Europe, which the Maltese government had signed and ratified. The first San Ġwann Council was elected on the 16th of April 1994. Inhabitants who are registered in San Ġwann as voters in the Local Council Electoral Register elect the council every 4 years. Elections are held by means of the system of proportional representation using the single transferable vote. And last but not least, the coat of arms in San Ġwann is a lamb, which is an attribute to St. John the Baptist. The first chapel in San Ġwann was dedicated to St. John himself, known as Tal-Arar. The San Ġwann motto, Ismek Tifhirek, means your name alone praises you, an apt description for San Ġwann. The community here in San Ġwann is quite strong, and most of them carry a sense of civic belonging. The people are extremely friendly and are always ready to lend a helping hand. It would be greatly appreciated if all San Ġwann residents tried to keep San Ġwann clean. It is not only an eyesore to see garbage bags all over the place, it is also extremely unhealthy in this heat which attracts rats. Why should piazzas be full of empty bottles and takeaway boxes when there are bins around the place? Dog poo is another health hazard. Come on, irresponsible dog owners, you are not the only people on the planet. Why should people have to play hopscotch as everywhere they walk they have to watch their step? That's all from me. Take care and keep safe.